When you're faced with a tough moment in a relationship, when emotions are high and the temptation to either lash out or desperately hold on is almost unbearable, that's when your true strength is tested. Most men, when they feel a woman pulling away, immediately go into panic mode. They either block her out of anger, thinking that cutting her off will somehow make her miss them, or they go to the opposite extreme and beg, hoping that pleading will somehow reignite her feelings. Both of those reactions are emotional responses that reveal a lack of control. They come from fear, from insecurity, from the inability to manage your own emotions in the moment. And that's exactly why the very first thing you need to do, above all else, is stay calm and keep your dignity. Now, think about it. When you block her because you're hurt, what message does that send? It tells her that you can't handle your emotions. It shows her that you don't have the emotional maturity to deal with difficulty in a composed way. Instead of creating curiosity or attraction, it creates relief. She doesn't feel your presence anymore, and instead of missing you, she feels validated and pulling away because you just confirmed her doubts. On the other hand, when you beg, when you send long paragraphs, when you keep asking her to reconsider, when you cry or plead for another chance, what does that show? It doesn't show love. It doesn't show devotion. It shows weakness. It shows neediness. It shows that you value her approval more than your own self-respect. And when someone senses that you are willing to throw away your dignity to keep them, they stop respecting you. Without respect, attraction dies. So the first and most powerful move you can make is to stop yourself from reacting in either of those ways. Staying calm doesn't mean you're indifferent. It doesn't mean you don't care. It means you have the discipline to master your emotions, to act from strength rather than from fear. Dignity means you hold yourself to a standard, even when your heart is screaming, even when your ego is burning. Because the truth is, the way you handle this moment determines how she will see you moving forward. If you show her that you can stand tall, that you don't lose yourself even when the relationship feels uncertain, you become more attractive, not less. Think about the kind of man women are naturally drawn to. It's not the man who lashes out when things don't go his way. It's not the man who pleads and begs for attention. It's the man who can handle adversity with calmness. It's the man who can be challenged, even rejected, and still stand firm in who he is. That's the man who carries quiet confidence. That's the man who creates curiosity. That's the man who doesn't need to say, I'm strong, because his actions show it. And in relationships, actions always speak louder than words. When you keep your dignity, you send a subtle but powerful signal. I am not controlled by desperation. I am not controlled by fear. I am not going to let emotions drive me into doing things that lower my value. That self-control is rare. Most people operate on impulse. Most people react. But if you can discipline yourself to respond instead of react, you separate yourself instantly from the crowd. You stand out. And in doing so, you give her a completely different experience than she might expect. If she pulled away thinking you would beg, you surprise her by not chasing. If she expected you to block her, you surprise her by staying composed and simply allowing space. That surprise makes her wonder. That wondering creates curiosity, and curiosity is the seed of attraction. This doesn't mean you ignore your emotions. You're human. And of course you feel hurt. Of course it stings when the person you care about pulls away. But emotional strength is not about pretending you don't feel anything. It's about choosing how you express those feelings. It's about not letting those emotions take the wheel and drive you into mistakes you'll regret. When you stay calm, you buy yourself time. You give yourself room to think clearly. And when you think clearly, you make choices that serve you instead of sabotage you. Let me put it this way. Blocking her or begging her are both attempts to control the situation. One is trying to punish her, the other is trying to convince her, but in both cases, the focus is still on her. What you need to do is shift the focus back to yourself. Staying calm is the first step because it forces you to pause. It forces you to say, wait, I can't control her feelings, but I can control my actions. And once you take that control, you begin to operate from strength instead of weakness. Keeping your dignity is not about being cold or robotic. It's about showing self-respect. It's about carrying yourself in a way that reflects value. When you value yourself, you naturally set the tone for how others should treat you. And here's the paradox. The moment you stop chasing validation, the moment you stop trying to control the outcome, that's the moment you become more magnetic. People are drawn to those who don't desperately seek approval. because it signals that they already have inner confidence. Now imagine this. Instead of blocking her, you keep living your life. Instead of begging, you keep improving yourself. She sees that you didn't collapse, you didn't lose yourself, you didn't let rejection define you. That makes her think twice. That makes her wonder, why isn't he reacting like other guys would? Why isn't he chasing me? That curiosity can eventually lead her back to you, not because you manipulated her, but because you showed strength. And whether she comes back or not, you've already won because you didn't lose your dignity in the process. At the core, staying calm and keeping your dignity is about remembering your worth. You were valuable before her, and you will be valuable with or without her. A relationship does not define you, it only adds to the life you've already built. When you hold that perspective, you don't panic when things shift, you don't crumble when someone pulls away. You remain grounded, and being grounded is one of the most attractive qualities a person can have. So the next time you're tempted to block her, don't. The next time you're tempted to beg, don't. Instead, take a breath, step back, remind yourself who you are. Your calmness is your power, your dignity is your shield. And when you can hold on to both, you set the foundation for everything else that follows. Because in the end, the man who stays calm, who keeps his dignity, who doesn't block or beg, he's the one who not only earns respect, but also creates the space for attraction to naturally grow again. And that's when everything changes. When a woman starts pulling away, most men make the mistake of focusing all of their energy on her. They obsess over what she's thinking, what she's feeling, and what they can do to change her mind. They analyze every text, every silence, every little detail, and in doing that, they lose themselves. They forget the most important thing they can do in that moment, which is to shift the focus back to themselves. Because the truth is, the more you focus on her, the more power you give away. The more you chase, the more you put her on a pedestal and put yourself beneath her. But when you turn that attention inward, when you redirect that energy into yourself, everything begins to shift. Think about how attraction works at the very beginning. She was interested in you not because you begged for her attention, not because you chased her, but because you were living your life. You had goals, you had purpose, you had something going on that made you interesting. She was drawn to your energy, to your confidence, to your drive. But when things get rocky, a lot of men drop all of that and start revolving their entire world around her. And the irony is that's exactly what kills the attraction. Because instead of being the man she was drawn to, you become someone desperate to hold on to her approval. Shifting the focus back to yourself means returning to the mindset you had when she was first attracted to you. It means putting your energy into your mission, into your goals, into building the life you want with or without her. It's about showing, not telling, that you are a man of value, a man who is constantly evolving, constantly leveling up, constantly pushing himself forward. When you do that, not only do you regain your confidence, but you also naturally reignite curiosity in her, because nothing sparks interest like growth. Let me give you an example. Imagine two scenarios. In the first, a guy notices his girl is distant. He panics, he texts her constantly, he cancels his plans just to be available in case she calls. He's consumed by her absence, and he loses himself in the process. In the second scenario, the guy notices the same distance, but instead of chasing, he goes to the gym, he dives deeper into his work, he spends time with friends, he picks up new hobbies, he invests in his personal growth. Which of those two men is more attractive? Which of those two men is more likely to reignite her interest? It's obvious. The man who chooses himself first. This doesn't mean you ignore her or act like she doesn't exist. It simply means you don't make her the center of your universe. You make yourself the center of your universe. And that's not selfish, it's essential. Because if you lose yourself in a relationship, you'll always be chasing balance that you can never achieve. When you focus on yourself, you become grounded, and from that grounded place, you're able to offer something real and lasting. Another reason focusing on yourself is so powerful is because it communicates without words that you're not afraid of losing her. And that's one of the most attractive signals you can send. When a woman senses that you're terrified of her leaving, she feels all the pressure, she feels smothered, and it pushes her further away. But when she sees that you're living your life fully, that you're still pursuing your passions, that you're still growing and thriving, she feels free. She sees you as a man who is complete, who doesn't need her for validation. And freedom plus curiosity is what draws people back together. Now let's talk about the psychological side. When you put the focus on yourself, you shift your mindset from scarcity to abundance. Scarcity is the belief that she's your only chance, that without her, you'll never be happy again. That belief leads to desperation, and desperation always pushes people away. Abundance, on the other hand, is the belief that your life has value no matter what, that you are capable of building happiness with or without her, that there are always opportunities, always options, always new chapters ahead. When you operate from abundance, you stop clinging. You stop suffocating the relationship, and ironically, that's when the relationship has the space to breathe again. Focusing on yourself is not just about external things like going to the gym or making more money, though those help. It's also about internal growth. It's about developing emotional strength, learning how to regulate your feelings, and building confidence from within. Because confidence that comes only from external validation is fragile. True confidence comes from knowing that no matter what happens, you'll be okay. When you build that kind of inner strength, you carry yourself differently. You walk differently, you speak differently, and people notice, she notices. And here's the beauty of this approach. Even if she doesn't come back, you still win. Because instead of wasting time begging or blocking, you've invested in yourself, you've grown, you've become stronger, more confident, more grounded. So whether she sees your value again or not, you're in a better position than you were before. That's the power of focusing on yourself. It's never wasted energy. Another thing that happens when you put energy into yourself is that you begin to attract not just her attention, but the attention of others. People naturally gravitate toward growth and positivity. When you're leveling up, when you're excited about your life, when you're radiating purpose, others can feel it. And that creates a ripple effect. Suddenly, she's not the only one noticing you. That subtle competition, that awareness that you are desired by others can reignite something in her that you could never spark by begging. Because no one is attracted to desperation, but everyone is attracted to confidence and momentum. Now, I know it's easier said than done. When your heart is on the line, when emotions are intense, it feels almost impossible to turn the focus back on yourself. But that's exactly why it's so powerful. It requires discipline, it requires patience, it requires you to step outside of your emotions and remind yourself that you are the prize, not the pursuer, that you are worthy of respect, not pity, that your value doesn't diminish just because someone isn't showing up the way you hoped. So instead of asking yourself, how do I get her back? Start asking yourself, how do I get myself back? Instead of wondering what she's doing, start wondering, what can I do today to become better than I was yesterday? Because that's the mindset shift that changes everything. That's the shift that takes you from desperate to confident, from needy to grounded, from reactive to attractive. And the truth is, when you make yourself your main focus, you stop fearing the outcome. You no longer obsess about whether she stays or leaves because you know you'll be fine either way. And ironically, that lack of fear makes you more attractive than any words or gestures ever could. Because nothing is more magnetic than someone who knows their worth and lives it every single day. So remember this. She was drawn to the man who had purpose, the man who had drive, the man who loved his life. If she's pulling away, don't abandon that man, become him again, but stronger. Because when you shift the focus back to yourself, you not only give her a reason to look your way again, you also give yourself the life you were meant to live. And that is the kind of energy no one can resist. One of the hardest things to do when someone you care about starts pulling away is to step back and give them space. Every instinct inside of you screams to do the opposite. You want to call, text, show up, remind them how much you care, prove your worth, and fight for the connection. It feels unnatural, almost painful to let go of that urge and resist the chase. But the truth is, space is one of the most powerful tools you have when it comes to attraction and relationships. It's not about playing games, it's not about manipulation, it's about allowing the natural dynamic of human emotions to work in your favor instead of against you. If someone feels pressured, they naturally want to escape. It doesn't matter how much they loved you at the start, it doesn't matter how many good memories you have, pressure always makes people retreat. Think about it. If you hold on to something too tightly, it slips through your fingers. Relationships work the same way. When you smother, when you constantly seek reassurance, when you push for closeness, the other person feels like they're losing their independence. And independence is crucial for attraction to thrive. That's why giving space is not weakness, it's strength. It shows you have the self-control to resist short-term impulses for the sake of long-term connection. The beauty of space is that it allows the other person to feel your absence. Right now, if she's pulling away, it means she needs room. If you ignore that and force your presence, she'll only associate you with pressure, with stress, with emotional heaviness. But if you step back, if you let her feel what life is like without your constant presence, you create contrast. And contrast is powerful. When something disappears, that's when its value is truly noticed. You cannot miss something that never leaves. So by stepping back, you give her the opportunity to realize on her own what you meant to her. This doesn't mean you cut her off cold or play mind games. It means you stop chasing, you stop overinvesting, and you let the natural balance of give and take return. Space doesn't create distance for the sake of separation. It creates room for curiosity. When she doesn't hear from you every hour, she wonders what you're doing. When she doesn't see you begging for her attention, she questions if you're moving on. That questioning is healthy. It sparks thoughts. It brings you back into her mind, but this time in a different way. Instead of being the guy who's always chasing, you become the guy she wonders about. And wondering is the seed of attraction. The truth is, the people who are hardest to walk away from are the ones who don't cling. They're the ones who give you space, who let you breathe, who let you choose to come closer on your own. When you force someone to stay, they want to run. When you let them go freely, they often find their way back. And even if they don't, giving space preserves your dignity because it shows that you respect both yourself and the other person enough not to beg for scraps of attention. Now, here's where most men mess up. They confuse giving space with ignoring or punishing. Giving space is not about cutting her off in anger. It's not about blocking her number to teach her a lesson. That's still emotional reaction. Real space is calm, it's mature, it's you continuing with your life, doing your thing, staying open but not forcing. It's about sending the signal that you are steady, that you don't lose control when things get difficult. And that's the kind of energy that women respect. It's also important to understand that space benefits you just as much as it benefits her. When you step back, you give yourself time to breathe too. You take a break from obsessing over every move, every silence, every sign. You reclaim your mental energy and redirect it into yourself, into your growth, into your goals. That's how you keep from spiraling into desperation. That's how you maintain your center. And the more centered you are, the more attractive you become. There's another truth about space that often gets overlooked. It reveals reality. When you step back, one of two things happens. Either she begins to miss you, to appreciate you again, to come back into your orbit, or she doesn't. And while the second option might sting, it's also a gift because it saves you from wasting time begging for someone who doesn't truly value you. It shows you where you really stand without the illusions created by constant chasing. In other words, space brings clarity, and clarity is priceless. Let me paint a picture. Imagine she's used to you texting every morning, checking in every night, constantly asking about her day. At first, you may have enjoyed the attention, but as she pulled away, it became overwhelming. Then suddenly you stop. You don't flood her phone. You don't demand answers. You simply step back. At first, you might feel relief, but relief eventually turns into curiosity. Curiosity turns into questioning, and questioning turns into attraction. She begins to wonder, why isn't he chasing me anymore? What's he doing with his time? Is he moving on? That's when she starts to reach out. That's when she re-engages. Not because you begged her to, but because you gave her the gift of missing you. This is where patience comes in. Giving space is not about instant results. It's not about expecting her to come running back the next day. It's about trusting the process. Trusting that if there's still attraction, it will resurface when you stop forcing it. And if it doesn't resurface, you'll still be in a stronger position because you didn't lose yourself in the chase. That patience is difficult, but it's what separates men who are controlled by their emotions from men who control their emotions. Now, I'm not saying space is easy. It's not. It feels uncomfortable. It feels like you're losing control. But that's exactly why it's so powerful, because by embracing the discomfort, you send a message not just to her, but to yourself that you are strong enough to let things unfold naturally, that you don't need to control every outcome, that you respect yourself enough to allow someone the freedom to choose you willingly, rather than trying to force them to stay. And here's the truth you need to hold on to: real attraction, real connection cannot be forced. It has to be chosen. And people can only choose freely when they have space. If you crowd them, if you pressure them, they don't feel like they're choosing, they feel trapped. But when you step back, when you allow space, when you give them freedom, you create the conditions for genuine choice. And genuine choice is the foundation of lasting attraction. So remember this, space is not the enemy, it's the answer. It's not distance that kills relationships, it's pressure. Space creates clarity, space creates curiosity, space allows attraction to breathe. And if she truly values you, space will bring her closer in a way that chasing never could. And that's why when the urge to beg or block takes over, the best thing you can do is nothing at all, just give her the gift of space. Most men make the mistake of thinking that the way to win a woman back or keep her attention is through constant reassurance, grand gestures, and endless words. They believe that if they can just convince her of their value, if they can just explain enough, beg enough, or prove enough, she will see what they see. But what they don't realize is that real attraction doesn't grow out of neediness, it grows out of value. And value isn't something you talk about, it's something you live. That's why the last and most important step is to lead with value, not neediness. Neediness is when your happiness depends on her validation. It's when you seek her attention not because you're full of purpose, but because you feel empty without it. It's when you're willing to do anything, even compromise your dignity, just to keep her around. And while you may think that proves your love, what it really shows is a lack of strength. Women deep down don't want a man who bends and breaks at every shift in their mood. They want a man who stands strong, who has his own mission, who lives with purpose and confidence whether they are there or not. When you lead with value, you send the message that your worth doesn't come from her response, it comes from who you are. You don't chase her approval, you embody qualities that naturally draw her toward you. This is why the men who are most successful in relationships are the ones who don't make the relationship their entire identity. They know that love is an addition to their life, not the definition of their life. And that distinction makes all the difference. Let's break it down. Imagine two men. One spends all his time trying to prove himself to his woman. He texts her constantly, rearranges his life to be at her disposal, and pours out endless declarations of love. The other man, while still caring, is grounded in his own mission. He's working on his career, he's building his body, he's investing in his growth, he's cultivating hobbies, he's surrounded by friends who respect him, and he treats her with affection without ever abandoning his own purpose. Which man do you think she will respect more? Which man do you think she'll admire and feel drawn to? It's not the one who needs her validation to feel complete. It's the one who is already complete and simply shares his life with her. That's the essence of leading with value. You don't have to announce it. You don't have to brag about it. You just live it. When she sees you getting stronger, becoming more confident, building your life, radiating purpose, she feels it. She notices the energy shift, and attraction is an energy. It's not created through begging or blocking, it's created through the way you carry yourself. Neediness, on the other hand, kills attraction faster than anything else. It suffocates, it feels heavy, it communicates that you don't believe in your own worth, and if you don't believe in it, why should she? But when you're secure, when you move with confidence, when your life has direction, you naturally invite respect. And respect is the foundation of desire. Without respect, love fades. Without respect, there's no trust. Without respect, there's no spark. This is why so many men lose women they deeply care about. They start to lead with neediness instead of value. In the early days of dating, they were focused on themselves, on their goals, on their mission. That's what made them attractive. But once they had her attention, they shifted all of their energy onto her, and in the process, they lost the very qualities that drew her in. Attraction fades not because she changed, but because he did. He stopped leading with value and started clinging out of need. So how do you get back to leading with value? You make a decision to prioritize your growth. You commit to becoming a better man every day, not for her, but for yourself. You develop discipline, you sharpen your mind, you strengthen your body, you deepen your purpose. You become a man who walks into a room and commands respect, not because he demands it, but because it radiates naturally from how he lives. That kind of man doesn't have to beg, he doesn't have to block, he doesn't have to prove anything. His presence does all the talking. Another part of leading with value is setting boundaries. A man of value doesn't tolerate disrespect, and he doesn't compromise his self-respect just to keep someone around. He knows his worth, and because of that, he commands respect without ever raising his voice. If she's pulling away, he doesn't chase. If she's treating him poorly, he doesn't beg for better treatment, he steps back. That restraint isn't coldness, it's strength. It shows that you know what you bring to the table, and you're not afraid to eat alone if necessary. And here's what's so powerful about this. When you truly embody value, you give her a reason to lean back in, not because you pressured her, not because you convinced her, but because she sees what you are and doesn't want to lose it. Attraction is not about trying to force someone to stay. It's about being so solid, so purposeful, so magnetic that staying becomes their natural choice. And that can only happen when you lead with value. The best part is when you adopt this mindset, you win regardless of the outcome. If she comes back, she's coming back to a stronger, more grounded, more confident version of you. And if she doesn't, you've still elevated your life, your confidence, and your future. Either way, you grow. Either way, you win. That's why focusing on value over neediness is so powerful. It puts the outcome in your favor no matter what happens. Neediness says, please choose me so I can feel worthy. Value says, I am already worthy, and if you see it, great. If not, I'll keep moving forward. One creates pressure, the other creates attraction. One drains you, the other empowers you. And the choice of which one to embody is always yours. So don't block her out of anger. Don't beg her out of desperation. Don't waste your time trying to prove something that should already be evident. Instead, just do this. Focus on becoming the man of value you were meant to be and watch what happens.